What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Not So Stupid podcast. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, Iman Boundaoui. Iman Boundaoui is a somatic life coach, and she has already been on the podcast one time before. The previous episode was released on January 1st, and it was all about becoming your best self and unlocking that potential that has been holding you back into becoming that self that you have envisioned for yourself. That podcast episode had some of the best reviews of any podcast episode that I had released, so highly recommend you checking it out after this one if you haven't checked it out yet. But that's why I was so excited to have her on again, is because you guys found it so valuable, and I'm sure you'll find this one just as valuable as well, where we will be talking about Ramadan and how to make the most of it so that you can achieve the goals you want to achieve, but achieve it in a different way than what your preconceived opinion or definition of achieve used to be. So breaking through some old ideologies and expectations that we set for ourselves and finding how to accurately and effectively match your energy with the energy that Ramadan presents so that you can make the most out of it for the month and for yourself and for the people around you. So very powerful episode. There's going to be a lot of takeaways that you guys will hopefully put into practice going into this month. Let's just get into the episode. So here we are with the interview with Iman Boundaoui.
All right, Iman Boundaoui, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here again.
Yeah, it's great to have you again. Your first episode got so many great responses that I had to bring you on again, especially for this time of year. But for the people that didn't hear the first episode, why don't you give them a little short bio about you?
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Iman. I am a somatic practitioner and life coach. I also do trauma-informed healing. My background is I actually used to be a lawyer, practiced law for about 5 years, and just found that I was a lot more interested in working with people one-on-one and working on healing traumas and also helping folks live out the best version of their life that they can imagine and envision. And so I do that full time, and it's really fulfilling, and I'm happy to be here and talk to you all about a little bit about that work and how that relates to the month of Ramadan that we're about to step into.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. I think I like that you use the phrase best version of yourself, because I think when Ramadan comes around, it sort of encourages people to try to be the best version of themselves and do everything that they can to accomplish that, right? I'm sure you feel the same way in terms of how Ramadan gets people motivated to roll that way. One question I get very often around this time of year is always fitness and nutrition stuff. How can I work out and eat healthy during Ramadan? But another thing is, how can I do that, but also try to accomplish all the other things I want to accomplish? I want to read the whole Quran for the month of Ramadan. I want to pray all the Taraweeh. I want to have the best azumas and host people really well. Like, there's a lot people feel like they need to put on their plate. How do you help people manage that, or how do you manage that for yourself? Where can you get started?
It's so interesting. One thing that just jumped out at me right away is how many times you use the word accomplish. And I think this is something we're all afflicted with as a generation and in the modern world, is this idea of accomplishing, this idea of how much can I get done, the quantity of stuff, how many things I can check off my checklist. And what's incredible is that Ramadan is actually inviting us to a whole different kind of energy. Ramadan is inviting us to more stillness and more quiet, more spaciousness and opening. And what's so funny is that because of our modern wiring and conditioning, we approach Ramadan in such a different way. We do the very sort of modern approach of like, this is how much I need to get done in a day, and this is what I want to accomplish, and this is what I want to check off my checklist. And we take that energy, that very sort of emphasis on productivity, that emphasis on quantity, that emphasis on more is better. We take that kind of frenetic modern energy and we try to apply it to Ramadan. And it's incredible because Ramadan is like, yo, that's not my energy. Like, that's not what I'm asking of you. And I have found over the years, in the years where I tried to do that, take that approach, where I had the checklist, like a juz a day and this much and this and this and this and this, I didn't have the energy for it. I didn't have, sometimes I just found myself, my body was moving slower than I thought. And I also had, I want to work out. I want to work out in the morning before we start fasting. And I had this massive list of stuff to get done. And when I finally realized the energy of Ramadan is so antithetical to that and so very much the opposite of that, I stopped taking that approach.
Mm.
I started to take a very different approach to Ramadan.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I think like you said, this is the modern energy where, in a capitalistic society with your job, you're constantly trying to do more and accomplish more and get bigger numbers. And because you spend so much time doing that, you translate that into other parts of your life. But you're saying it's not the same energy. So can you go into what the energy of Ramadan is so people can align themselves a little better with that and kind of shift their perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said capitalistic, because I think that is an important context. And it's important to name the systems that have shaped us to become this way. We are not this way on accident. We're not all running around with a massive checklist that we can never get to on accident. It's on purpose, right? The capitalist structure is intended to create burnout, to create a sense of I'm not enough. Like, and we often feel that. All of us struggle with I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough. Again, all because of this framework of productivity. And so Ramadan is really revolutionary. And if we treat it as such, we can really start to shift those paradigms in our life if we step into the invitation that Ramadan is offering us. And so when we talk about what is that energy, what is that invitation, just continuing on the theme that we've talked about, one of the first things I would say is that Ramadan is an invitation to quiet and stillness. Quiet and stillness. Traditionally, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and the time thereafter, and in fact, in traditional Islamic societies like Al-Andalus, Ramadan was a time of retreat and reflection. People spent their day meditating, reflecting in stillness and quiet. And so at its core, Ramadan is an invitation to that. We are being invited to stillness. And inside of that stillness, there's this really beautiful reminder that we are inherently worthy. I don't have to create, I don't have to produce, I don't have to do to be worthy, to be dignified. I am inherently, innately dignified, worthy. And stillness is a reminder of that. It is a reminder that God created me on purpose. And simply my state of being, not doing, being is enough, is what God created me for. To be in worship, to be in reflection of the divine, to be in a state of remembrance of the divine. And if nothing else, Ramadan is a reminder and an invitation to that, to come back to our stillness and to a basic state of being and not a state of doing. We spend 11 months of the year doing, checking off the massive list, feeling guilty and shame all the time for not being enough. This month is the medicine to that. This month is the antidote to that frenetic energy that we are in for 11 months of the year. This month is a reminder that I don't have to do to be worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy in my stillness. I am worthy when I do less. And so that texture of quiet and stillness, of reflection, of retreat is a major sort of a shift in paradigm for, when you compare it to the rest of our year, and when you compare it to the normal sort of day-to-day paradigm and framework that we live in around productivity and being quote unquote successful. And so I would say that is kind of the first primary energy of Ramadan, quiet and stillness. The other thing I will say about this month that is really sets it apart from the rest of the year and our regular day-to-day life, it's a very real invitation back into the body. And this might seem contrary at first because we're not eating, we're not drinking. And in fact, the not eating and the not drinking really brings this incredible focus on our bodies, the capacity of our bodies, and the needs of our bodies. And, you know, from a somatic perspective, as a somatic life coach, I spend my work trying to get people into their bodies, right? It is sort of primary foundational piece of embodiment and somatic transformation. And Ramadan does that. Ramadan is the great teacher of somatics because it forces us into our bodies, because our bodies slow down. Without food and water, we have a lot more awareness of our energy levels. We have this fine-tuned awareness of our hunger. We have this fine-tuned awareness of what I can and can't do, right? What is right for me, what is wrong for me. You know, most people on an everyday sort of day-to-day basis, we're not very aware of our bodies. We're not very aware of our capacity, our limitation. And so often we say yes to things that are actually not right for us, right? Hey, do you want to go on this run, right? I know that running is not great for my body. You know how many times I have said yes to running, and then later on I'm like, I know this isn't right for my body. Why do I do it, right? And we have these experiences. Someone invites us to something, and we're just like, yes, for the social experience, for the, but maybe it's actually beyond my limitation, or it is, it's not the right thing for me, right? Eating this meal isn't the right thing for me. Doing this workout or going out of my way to do this thing isn't what's right for my body. But we often ignore those things. When you are fasting, when you are not drinking water, you simply can't ignore those things. We are so in tune and synchronized with our bodies that we absolutely know what's right for us, what's wrong for us. If someone invited you while you were fasting on a 1 mile run, you'd be like, absolutely not. That is not right for my body, right? You wouldn't even take that risk, right? And so in a very real way, this month is an invitation back into the body. We are in tune. We are in sync with our body's needs, with the life force inside of us when it's dwindling towards asr time and we're like, I have no energy for anything. All I can do right now is lay down. And then that burst of energy after Maghrib, right? And then we are in tune with our natural rhythms. And so it's a very beautiful time to lean into that, to accept that invitation back into your body. And not just as a temporary practice for this month, but something to cultivate for our entire existence. How beautiful would it be if throughout our entire year, throughout our entire life and existence, we are in tune with our body's needs. When somebody offers us to eat or drink something that isn't quite right for us, we have the ability to say no, thank you, right?
Mhm.
When someone invites us into an activity or to a social gathering that isn't right for our mental health or our mental well-being or our body's health, we can say no thank you. Just the same way, if somebody invited us to a mile run during Ramadan, we can very easily allow ourselves to say no thank you. I don't think we give ourselves that permission. I don't think we give ourselves that permission to be the experts on our own bodies, to be the experts on our own um, health and well-being. We often look outside of ourselves for indicators of what's good for us, right? People are always telling us what's good for us, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, how much you should exercise, how much water you should drink. There's all this information outside of us on what's good for us. Ramadan is a reminder that we are the best experts on what is right for us. Some people run and work out during Ramadan. I mean, you have
Mhm.
these like Muslim soccer players and basketball players that are
Crazy.
on the court. It's incredible. They know that that's right for them. They have the capacity for that, right?
Mhm.
Another person will say, the best I can do while I'm fasting is a walk. Beautiful. What if we took that same autonomy and energy and that same um, sense of I know myself best throughout our
Mhm.
entire lives? So it's a beautiful practice. It's a beautiful time to practice that and a beautiful thing to cultivate being in the body, honoring the body's needs, and honoring the fact that we are each the best keeper of the secrets of our body, the
Mhm.
best keeper of knowledge of our body, that we don't need to look outside of ourselves to understand what's best for us, that all of that knowledge and intuition and wisdom is right here.
Mm. I love all of that so much. And there's a lot I want to like kind of dive into, but I'm gonna go back to like, your first point in terms of the first energy of Ramadan, right? Going back to stillness and finding worthiness not in what you accomplish, but in just being. And you mentioned that we are a product of the system that we're in, and it happened on purpose, right? And I think for a lot of people, kind of breaking free of that definition of worthiness from accomplishment and making it two separate things
Mm,
can be kind of hard, right? Because you're raised from 5 years old, you go through school, you have to accomplish certain things to be good. You go through a job, you have to get accepted to a certain place to be good. While you're there, you have to do a certain amount of things to be good and worthy. Otherwise, you get lost. But if we look before those systems were implemented, as a toddler, as a baby, you kind of just exist. You're curious about things, you play with things, you interact with other people, and that baby, that toddler, is worthy of being, life on this earth, of being a human being, and it's not, no one can say they're unworthy. And I think like through the 10, 20 plus years of going through the system, we've unlearned that uh, okayness, I guess, contentment with worthiness in just being. The How do you feel about that kind of idea that I broke down?
I mean, absolutely, right? We are born with an innate sense of worthiness. And, if we connect that to this idea of fitra, which in English we can translate to our primordial nature, it is in our fitra to feel worthy. It
Mm-hmm.
is in our fitra to feel okay, to feel content with what is. And like you said, as we grow older, we are subjected to all of this misinformation around worthiness,
Mm-hmm.
all of this kind of brainwashing and social engineering that teaches us that our worthiness is connected to our productivity. Our worthiness is connected to what we accomplish in the world. And the truth is, so much of growth, of spiritual growth, of developing ourselves, is unlearning all of that and
Mm-hmm.
coming back to that primordial nature, coming back to that fitra that disconnects worthiness from doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not to say that doing goes out the door, right? This isn't to say that we stop doing. It is also in our fitra to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as children have this hunger for building blocks and playing with this toy and going into the cabinet and moving their bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But children don't connect that to a sense of worth. That is a very adult, modern, social phenomenon. And so our work as adults is, how do I create these really healthy goals around, this is what I want to do in the world. This is the work that I want to do in the world. This is what I want to accomplish. This is what matters to me, right? How do we hold that as true, independent of our sense of self-worth, right? Two separate things rather than then being interconnected.
Yeah.
And that's the work. That's the work of spiritual growth. That's the work of self-development. That's the work of consciousness and awareness. A lot of the work that I do with clients is to peel back these added layers around worth and to hold as a uncontested fact that we are inherently worthy, simply by the fact that God chose us to the divine chose to put us on this earth. God created us with that sense of worth. And then how do I accomplish and work and do and hold that as its own sort of realm?
Right.
A lot of that involves forgiveness and compassion with self. So if that checklist, you don't get to check it all the way down, oh, I'm good. I'm going to be compassionate about that. I forgive myself for that. That's okay. Being in a practice of every single day, looking at your list of stuff and celebrating what you did instead of noticing what you didn't do, that basic practice helps you get there.
Yeah.
And I would say, for us to take that and apply it in a very real and big way in Ramadan. Celebrate what you are doing in this month, rather than at the end of the day, oh my God, I didn't finish my juz'at. I didn't do all of this. I didn't do all of that. It's incredible as humans. We are so hardwired to look at the glass half empty. This practice of looking at the glass half full, this practice of celebrating what we do get to, this practice of forgiveness and compassion, this is what helps start to untangle worthiness from doing. These are the practices. You do that every day. You look at your checklist and you're like, heck yeah, I got to that. Oh my God, I read 10 pages of Quran. Oh my God, I prayed those 2 sunnah. That will start to do this for you. And in fact, this is where it's kind of counterintuitive. When we start celebrating the accomplishments instead of denigrating ourselves or shaming ourselves for the quote unquote failures, we get to more. We actually are able to quote unquote accomplish more. So if your biggest goal is like, I don't care what this woman is saying, all I want to do is accomplish. Okay. I guarantee you, I promise you that what I am talking about is actually the most direct path to getting more done. When you start celebrating the 10 pages of Quran that you read, when you start celebrating the Sunnah that you read, the next day, your body and your spirit have capacity for more. Your, joy and gratitude are higher frequencies in terms of energy than shame and guilt. When we raise our frequency, when we raise our energetic frequencies using joy and gratitude and celebration and patting ourselves on the back, we actually raise our energy. And when we raise our energy, we're able to do more, if that's your goal. I'm arguing here, you don't necessarily have to do more. But if there is a hunger and a thirst to do more, to give more, then the direct path to that is through celebrating and joy rather than guilt and shame.
So I do want to point out, like you said, the idea is kind of paradoxical, right? Where you want to accomplish this big thing, but you can't do that. But if you want to continue to do that, or I shouldn't say you can't do that, you shouldn't focus on that. But if you want to continue to do that, and that's really important to you, then you should celebrate what you do accomplish, right? And it's kind of like butt heads. But I think a lot of it comes from the expectation of what you should be doing, right? Because when you say read 10 pages of Quran, people are thinking, damn, I didn't read a juz'at today, right?
Yeah.
And they think that the sign of being successful on this day of Ramadan was reading one juz'at, because that's what they've always been told, always learned. But it's kind of like missing the point, essentially, right? Because it's not about the juz'at, it's about reading Quran in general. It's about finding that peace, right? So how do people redefine their goals or find the purpose for what they're doing in that regard?
I think my short answer to that is focusing on quality rather than quantity. You know, again, going back to the paradigms that have shaped us, the social engineering to do more, do more, do more. We lose a focus and a prioritization of the quality of the things that we're doing, right?
Mhm.
You can read 30 pages of Quran a day and not absorb a single word.
Right.
You can read 10 pages and absorb every single word. And I am not saying that quantity is not important. I am saying that we have tilted that balance so deeply that all we care about is quantity, that we have lost the sense of quality of things, quality time, quality worship, quality prayer, quality reading, all of these things, quality, quality, quality. And in order to get back into balance between quantity and quality, we have to start paying attention to quality, right? We've given way too much attention to quantity. We are engineered to care about quantity and amount and the number of things, that it is going to take very intentional paying attention to our presence when we are worshiping, our presence when we are with God, our presence when we are reading the Word of God. When we start to pay attention to quality, we will start to notice what's important here, right? You will start to get a sense of like, actually, that 10 pages that I read, I understood, I connected, I learned more than that speedy 30 pages. And here's the thing, if you're able to do both, absolutely do both. But do not sacrifice quality for quantity, because that's where you get to the place where you just said where you're missing the point. Literally, I mean, when we talk about pun intended, you are
Right.
missing the point. You're missing the point of the thing that you're reading when you're just glossing over it. We want to get to a place where we're back in balance, where we are back in balance, not only for the month of Ramadan, but for our entire lives, where we will focus on our presence, where we focus on the quality of our being and the quality of how we are showing up to the thing, just as much as we focus on the amount of the thing or how much I got done. Once we are back into balance, we can talk about, that one juz'ah a day and da da da. If you can maintain quality when you do that, all the more power to you. But if you find that you are speeding through prayer, you are speeding through reading, just to do that checkbox, you're missing the point, right?
Yeah.
Get back, accept the invitation to stillness, accept the invitation to slow down, and use that stillness and slowing down as a way to start perfecting and cultivating a sense of quality in the way that you do things. We have these phrases in the way that we talk, but we kind of miss them sometimes. It's like, when someone cooks with love, right? You feel it in the food. When someone is like, it's a labor of love and they really paid attention and they were so intentional rather than like a quick meal.
Right.
We feel these things as humans. We're really tuned into when someone is sitting with us and having a quality conversation. We notice when a person is really there with us, present, listening deeply, rather than when someone is distracted and kind of having a conversation in their own head. We as humans are in tune to these like things, these kind of subtle,
Intangibles.
non-intangible things. Um, God, our creator, knows the difference too, right? If we can tell the difference as human beings, God knows the difference. God can tell the difference, and we can tell the difference. And so simply coming back to that state of awareness and noticing, how am I in this prayer? How did I show up? How did I show up to this reading of the Quran, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to emphasize quality and de-emphasize quantity, we get back to that right balance of things.
So then the question to ask yourself when you're looking at the things you want to accomplish, right, quote unquote accomplish, it's about how can I do this better as opposed to how can I do more of this thing.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what a beautiful lesson to take into our life, right?
Mhm.
Imagine we approached everything in our life that way. That those things that you just said and that we've been talking about are the key to contentment. They are the key to more joy. They are the key to appreciating what we have rather than always looking ahead and forward into what's next, what's next, what's next. It's like, how can we come back to the here and now and appreciate the quality of our life rather than constantly judging, oh, but I haven't gotten to this, but I'm not where I want to be. I'm not quite there yet. And if we can continue pulling our energy and our attention uh, from those outside um, messages, and also from that future of like we're always looking ahead to how can we be better, 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 more, 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 what's next, and come back to this present moment where we just appreciate how we've just done something really well, right?
Mhm.
And when we continue to cultivate that, we get to a place of more contentment. We get to a place of okayness. Um, and that's really important in a world that is constantly demanding so much of us.
Mhm. No,
Um, yeah,
yeah, I feel that one deeply. And it goes back to your initial point about the second energy of Ramadan is being in your body once again, invitation to be inside your body again and have that mindfulness and intentionality to every action that you do. Because, at this point in our lives, the last 3 months, the last year, everything is kind of like going through the motions, going through the motions. We do them because it's what we've always done. But now we second, not second guess, but take a pause, right? Take a momentary pause to reflect on, is this even worth my energy? Is this necessary for me? Is this actually helping me? And it makes every action you do follow through with more beneficial to you, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and more meaningful
Mm.
and more in alignment with your values. If we took a pause every single time we were asked to do something, a request comes in, someone is asking us for time or energy. And if every single time we took a pause and we asked, how does this serve me? How is this in alignment with my values? We would live a life with a lot less regret and a lot less, looking back and I can't believe I wasted my time on that or wasted my time on that. So much of our regret in life is born out of the fact that we say yes to things that aren't right for us. Is that we take on what is beyond our capacity or beyond our actual interest and desire. And we're kind of just socialized to say yes, 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 more and more and more. We're
Mhm.
kind of socialized um, to appease other people. And when you are back in your body and back in alignment with your needs and what's right for you, you start to learn how to say no. You start to learn how to say no, thank you, right? And
Mhm.
only let in that which truly serves you and serves your values. And so, when I think about some ways that happens in Ramadan, Taraweeh is a really good example. There's a lot of social pressure to go to Taraweeh. Now, I'm sure for all the introverts and all the people who love to pray in the quiet, pandemic Taraweeh last year was perfect because there
Yeah.
was no Taraweeh. There was no pressure, right? Um, but it was an incredible reflection of like, wow, look at all of that social pressure to go to Taraweeh. And by the way, that is a created modern phenomenon. In the time of the Prophet, ﷺ, they did not pray Taraweeh in large public gatherings like that regularly. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ more often than not, prayed Taraweeh in the privacy of his own home.
Wow.
But we feel so much pressure to show up, to in fact, I hate to say it, perform,
Right.
right? Religion and spirituality, again, because of all the pressures, and I think I don't know, this weird modern phenomenon to perform. So religion and spirituality in one ways have become performative.
Yeah.
You know, people show up to Taraweeh and then there's like this bragging around like, oh, I did all 30 days in the masjid,
Right.
you know, and I
Or
did.
or even like the masjids that they do the 20 rak'at Taraweeh. It's like, oh, I did all 20 rak'ats and you
Right.
left at rak'at 8, kind of thing.
Exactly. Again, with the quantity and in this case with the outward outward presentation of
Right.
our religiosity and spirituality and how much we're doing. This need to prove to other people that we're good. This need to prove to other people that that we're doing the right thing. And again, when we talk about coming back to the body, it's also about coming back to the self. How do we hold ourselves accountable without needing that performative aspect of it, right? How can we feel okay doing things in the darkness, right? And in the privacy of our own home where no one else is keeping tabs except God. When we do and perform for others, we are losing something in that process. We are losing some of our intention. We're losing some of the authenticity of it. When we instead come back to our own selves as like the litmus test and the guide and the ones who are holding ourselves accountable, and the only one who is seeing you pray is God, then it really is a practice of purifying the intention and it's more authentic, right? And so so how do we disentangle ourselves from those social pressures? How do we disentangle ourselves from that performative nature and get back to what Ramadan is about? And it's about our own personal growth. It is about our own cultivating ourselves and cultivating our own inner spirituality and connection with God. And yeah, and so there's so many layers to all of this, and it's like
Right.
I feel like we can talk about it forever, but these are some really core things that that come to mind.
Yeah. I think like with the Taraweeh example we just went through, it's kind of the same process with the Quran we were talking about, right? You come back to what the purpose of that thing is. And if you're going to the masjid just to have everyone see you and say that you went to Taraweeh, you're losing sight of what you're supposed to be doing this thing for, right? And like you said, it loses its internal value. It loses its effect on you because your energy and intention toward this action isn't as positive anymore. It's not as pure, right? It's a little murky with this need to feed your ego for being accomplished and having that approach. So like I think like in the end, for every kind of step that we talked about, it always comes back to what is this purpose? How and why am I doing this thing? And is the way I'm thinking about doing this thing actually gonna accomplish that? Right? Accomplishment being the key word for this whole podcast, apparently. But yeah, it's
You keep
essentially
using it,
that.
not me.
I know, I keep going back to it, and I hate myself for doing it. I need synonyms, but I can't think of any.
We'll think of a
Um,
better word.
yeah, but it ends up being that, right? You want to feel more in tune with yourself, and you have an expectation for what action you should do that, but maybe that's a flawed expectation, right?
Yeah,
And you need to reverse engineer that, which takes time, it takes work, and it takes reflecting, but it's the best way to make sure your energy is used in the right manner. Isn't that
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And I think, the primary inquiry and reflection we should all be in is like, what is the source of the expectation?
Mm,
Is the expectation really an expectation that I have of myself, that is born of my values, that is born out of my own inner drive and inner sense of wanting to do more, right? Or is that expectation, was that formed outside of me and I'm simply absorbing and adopting a social expectation, um, a public expectation, right?
mhm,
So whenever we can stop and pause and ask ourselves, what's the source of this? Why do I feel the need to do this? Is that really inside of me, or is that outside of me? And the more and more we can get really clear about the stuff that is being generated from within us, a desire, a yearning, a wanting, that's from here, from inside, from a wholehearted place. Um, if we can get really clear about those things and prioritize those things, then we're on the right track. But the
mhm,
more and more we check in with ourselves and actually realize that the expectations we have of ourselves start came in from the outside, our parents, our family, our community, society at large, it's going to be really hard to get that stuff done. It's really hard
mhm,
to fulfill on something that didn't actually get generated from within you. So if you find over and over again, you have this massive list of stuff that you want to do in Ramadan, and somehow year after year, Ramadan after Ramadan, you can't quite get through the checklist. I urge you and encourage you, go back to that checklist and ask yourself, what is the source of each of these things? Is this something that was born out of my own inner desire and expectation of myself? Or
mhm,
did this list get generated by default from out there, you
mhm,
know, from all the things that I learned that I'm supposed to quote unquote be doing? And if you can get down to a core list, if you can shrink that list and only include the stuff that gets generated from within, that is sourced from you, sourced from your own spirit, from your own sense of values, then I promise it's going to be a lot easier to do that stuff, because there is a natural motivation when it's generated from within. We have a higher level of energy to quote unquote accomplish or do or get through the stuff that is really specifically important to us, rather than stuff that is important to other people and that we just kind of adopted by default.
Man, I love the people listening won't know that this happened, but I love that as you were saying that, the sun kind of came on your face, like the clouds parted. It seemed like very prophetic of a statement. It's very fitting for what you just said.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I started to feel the warmth and I was
yeah.
like, hey, that's just,
Oh, it's very symbolic. I love it. The world came together for that one.
mm,
But I agree. I always like to say personally that like expectation is the root of all disappointment. Every expectation that you have, and every time you feel a negative emotion, I think you can always chase back to some expectation that didn't need to be there in the first place. And that's just my personal philosophy. And I want to fight with the abstract concept of expectation very often because of that. But I like that you switched it and kind of divided expectations from an external expectation to an internal expectation. What is what expectations do I have for myself as a human being to fulfill for my own needs, for my own desires, for my own, um, I don't know what another word is, but those kind of cover
Values,
everything. Yeah, values. That's a good one. Philosophies, you know.
right? What do I
Um,
actually value, right?
mhm,
What is important to me? We are not a monolith, right?
mhm,
Often I think our identity as Muslims um, collapses us,
mhm,
and we view ourselves as a monolith. Like we all have the same goals, we all have the same stuff that we are supposed to be doing. We all,
right.
in some ways, that's true. We have pillars of faith, right? That are a guideline and a map for
Mhm,
how we should be living and what God expects of us. Everything outside of that is human expectation, right?
mhm,
And to get into alignment, and to get into a sensation that, like, actually, my religion is personal. Actually, my spirituality and my connection with God is personal. The way we do that is we check in with ourselves. What's important to me? How do I want to approach Ramadan? Not how I was told to approach Ramadan.
mhm,
How do I want to approach the prayer, right? The prayer is already there as a framework of expectation that's from God. But how do I want to? People pray in a million different ways, right?
mhm,
And so the more and more we can get away from this idea that we are a monolith, we all have the same goals. Everybody should be reading one juz of Ramadan, one juz of Quran during Ramadan. Everyone should be going to Taraweeh. Everyone.
mhm,
The more we can get away from that general umbrella and get really specific about ourselves and our relationship to this religion and our relationship to God, and get more specific about our inner expectations, um, I think the better we'll feel when Ramadan is over. I think
mhm,
the more we will celebrate the way that we were in Ramadan, rather than judging ourselves against everyone else, rather than judging what we accomplish against what other people accomplished. We are not all built the same. We are not built equally in that sense. God judges us based on our individual capacities. And so we have to get really individual and really specific about our goals and our values, and stop generalizing and stop assuming that what works for other people works for us. And
mhm.
this isn't just true about religion and spirituality, it's everything.
Right.
What work The foods that work for other people don't work for us, right?
Mhm,
The amount of socialization that works for you doesn't work for me. Um, we and I and we forget that. We lose sight of that. We're constantly leveling ourselves up against other people. We're
mhm,
constantly using other people as a benchmark for what we should be doing and what we should be accomplishing. And Ramadan is a very real invitation to make yourself the benchmark, right?
mhm,
Um, we we and if we can cultivate that here in this month, then we're really setting ourselves up for a lot more contentment and joy in the rest of our lives. Um, yeah,
yeah, I love that. It's reflecting on what is important for you, embodying that during Ramadan, finding ways to accurately embody that for yourself, and then carrying it through the rest of the year, and then checking back in every now and then so that by next Ramadan, you're still continuing what you built this
yeah,
Ramadan, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And we are in the woods, so
Mhm,
I would be remiss not to say that Ramadan is also an invitation to synchronize with nature, to
mm,
sync our cup with nature. We follow the moon cycle as Muslims for the month.
right.
We track the start of Ramadan with the new moon, the middle of Ramadan, the full moon, the end of Ramadan, the next new moon is Eid. And so we are more in touch with nature in Ramadan very naturally. We're
Mhm,
also in sync with the sun rising and the sun setting. We start fasting at the break of dawn, and we
right.
break our fast at sunset. And so we are in a new rhythm in
Mhm.
this month. We are in a more natural rhythm. And in fact, like the rhythm that animals use to like wake up and sleep and,
Mhm.
and and so it really is a beautiful invitation to get back to nature, to get back to our natural rhythms, to get back to our natural state of being.
Mhm.
Um, and we have these indicators in other places in our religion, but I think it's lost on us. Like the five prayers, for example, very closely match the sun and
Mhm.
what the sun is doing during the day, right? Fajr is the break of dawn. Dhuhr is when the sun is the highest in the sky. Asr is when the sun is low. Maghrib is when the sun sets. And then Isha is when there is darkness, when there's no light left in the sky. Before we had apps, people followed the sun to
Right.
pray, right? But we've become so dependent on technology
Right.
for all of these things that we've lost like the spirit of
Mhm.
of our religion. And our religion is very much an animate religion, right? Where we are in touch with what other people consider, dead or
Mhm.
inanimate. In our religion, we are taught that these things are alive and living. This tree right next to me, this redwood, is living, right?
Right.
It's a living being. The moon, the sun, all of these things are mentioned in the Quran, are celebrated in the Quran, and it is a really beautiful time to get back there, to
Mhm.
to to get back to our natural cycle, our natural rhythm, and all of the things in nature around us that are helping us figure out how to be in balance,
Mhm.
right? Um, so I just had to say that because you mentioned
Yeah.
the sun, and I have this redwood right next to me, and I have these redwoods in the background, and we couldn't end this podcast without talking about nature. So
Right. No, of course. I like that you connected it back because, again, the energy of Ramadan you're talking about is stillness. And the ultimate teacher of stillness and being is a tree. There's nothing that knows how to be and knows how to be still like a tree and still
right.
be worthy and give to the world.
This this beautiful lady right here has felt worthy since the day she was born and
Hmm.
has never felt unworthy. And
Hmm.
all she does is grow and get tall and give us oxygen. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, she
Right.
does a lot for us. But it's like, how can we be more like that, right?
Hmm.
Um, how can we get back to a sense of self worth and
Hmm.
dignity and inherent worthiness just by
Yeah.
being.
And
And
building off of that. Oh,
yeah,
you finish. Go ahead. I didn't
no,
mean to
and
cut
I
you
was
off.
saying, and this month is a beautiful time to practice that.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful time to practice that.
Yeah, I just want to add to the analogy of this tree doing what it does, growing, giving us oxygen, independent of all the other trees. It's not in a competition with the other trees. It's
Right,
doing its own thing and being there and existing, and it's
right,
just as valuable as everything else in the world.
absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely. And the
awesome.
more and more we um, celebrate our differences, and the more and more we celebrate, what works for you doesn't work for me. I think the more connected we actually can get, rather
Hmm.
than all of this competition between us as humans. And again, capitalism that has created so much of that competition. We are more connected in that way. I think we can get more connected in that way,
Hmm.
and I hope we really lean into that this month, this beautiful month, and retreat back into ourselves, um, so that we can be more present in with other people and in the world, so that
Hmm.
we can be more in tune, so that we can be more intentional, so that we can have a greater level of contentment with what we do have and how we are. um, yeah.
Mm. I love that as an ending note. That was phenomenal. So, two questions for you. One is again, for the people that didn't listen to your podcast the first time you were on the show, where can they find you and more of your content?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My
Mhm.
profile name is Iman Boundaoui. It's a public profile, and that's where I share a lot of my thoughts and feelings around embodiment, somatics, what it looks like to live in the body, what it looks like to live more intentionally, and a lot of the stuff that we touched on today. So, Instagram, and from there, I'm hoping to build a website later this year, and we'll see where it all goes.
Oh, man, inshallah khair. It sounds exciting. So that is going to be all linked in the show notes for you. Thank you, Iman, for this amazing show. Very grateful to have you on once again. Hopefully, everyone listening, and to you as well, a very blessed Ramadan and a very happy and still Ramadan that can change our way of living going forward. But thank you, everyone that listened and tuned in. We'll see you guys on the next episode.